I also wanted to talk about that. I want to give the NBA a shout out for how good they've handled the bubble. Um, I know it came out that over for the 300 plus people that are players that have been tested for coronavirus in the latest test, all of them came back negative. So it just goes to show what a good bubble does, what self isolating does. Being in the bubble must be great for those NBA players. They know they're pretty safe from the virus. I know they're away from their fans and their family, but Adam Silver has done a great job setting up this NBA restart, setting up this bubble in Orlando. So shout out to him. But with that being said, the MLB is kind of taking the opposite route. They still have every team playing in their home stadium. They've had 2 outbreaks since the MLB restarted, and I personally don't believe that they're gonna finish the season. Like, to have 2 outbreaks in the first couple weeks of your season doesn't look good. I know 6 teams that have already been sidelined, and they've had to have games rescheduled. And it's the Cardinals, the Bruins, the Brewers, the Marlins, the Phillies, the Nationals, and the Jays. And the biggest outbreak being in the Marlins, where 20 of their players and staff tested positive. So it just doesn't look good for the MLB. I don't think it's a good idea to have teams traveling that much in times like this in a pandemic and going into hotspots like Florida and stuff like that. It just doesn't seem like it's gonna work out. And if this keeps up, I think they just put stricter rules in place for the players, and I think if they're found to be like doing activities that the MLB doesn't agree with, they could be like suspended now, or they could get fined. Just the fact that they're not in a bubble, and it's a numbers game. If so many players, I don't see them finishing the season. I know they shortened the season to, I believe, 62 games, but if they get to game 40 or 50, I'll be very surprised. I don't see the MLB season ending. And the same could be said for the NFL. Right now, everything seems to be set up that the NFL would kind of be like the MLB, where teams will be traveling from city to city, stadium to stadium, to go play their away games. And that's a bad setup. Like, I want the NFL to finish. It's a way shorter season. It's only 16 games, but they have a way bigger roster. The NFL carries 55 players in each roster, so just having to keep an eye on all those players for going from city to city is just going to be very, very tough. I know today, July 24th, the NFL agreed with the Players Association to have an agreement where players could opt out for the 2020 season. And since then, the deadline to opt out has gone and passed. It's today, August the 6th. Thursday, August the 6th was the last day that they could opt out. And 67 players have opted out, 8 players being from the Patriots. 67 is a pretty good amount. I think not that many stars opted out, but there was enough like quality players that opted out where it could impact a lot of teams. I think the Chiefs lost two offensive linemen, one of them being Laurent Duvernay Tardif. I think he's the starting right guard. He's the only player in the NFL to actually have an MD. He's a doctor. He got his degree from Canada. So it's a little funny that he's the only doctor in the NFL was the first one to opt out of the season because of coronavirus. So I mean, maybe he knows something. He's probably the most educated in that topic. So to see him being the first one to opt out is just like, all right, there's probably going to be a lot more players that opt out, and 66 followed through. The Patriots lost 8 players, most notably Dante Hightower and Patrick Chung, the safety. Dante Hightower is a really good linebacker. Chung is a pretty decent, above average safety. But Belichick is a defensive coach, and he's a defensive genius, so I don't think they'll lose too much with them. The Patriots already don't have that high of expectation. They did get Cam Newton, but going into the season, once they lost Brady, not a lot of people had them being one of the favorites. in the AFC East. Maybe a lot of people had the Bills winning the East, and no one had really the Patriots making it out of the AFC. But with 8 players opting out, it just kind of hurts their chances even more. But I do believe in Cam Newton, and I want to see him succeed. So hopefully they're able to power through and have a good season. Even though I'm not really I'm not a fan of anybody. I'm from San Diego, and it really hurt me when the Chargers left. So I've been a free agent ever since they left. So if any of the teams have a good team that I could join, so I'm not a free agent no more, hit me up. When I'm a fan of you, I'm a pretty diehard fan. I watch all the games, and I know all the players. So shout out for any teams looking for fans. I'm available. But yeah, another key player that opted out was Damian Williams, running back for the Chiefs. He's a pretty good runner of the ball. He can catch the ball. He's pretty dynamic. I think he was going to be the starting running back for the Chiefs or be in the competition with the rookie. But now since he opted out, Clyde Edwards, first running back taken off the board in the latest draft, the 2020 draft. So now Clyde Edwards, being a rookie, being the starting running back, playing next to Patrick Mahomes, that's going to be really good for him. If you guys play fantasy, Clyde Edwards, that's one of the running backs to take. He's going to have a great season. That offense is going to score points for fun, and to be the starting running back in that team, great things for Clyde Edwards. Unfortunately for the Packers, Devin Funchess was one of those players that opted out for the 2021 NFL season, 2020-2021 season. And I know Rodgers can't be happy. This last draft was supposed to be one of the deepest wide receiver drafts ever. I think there was like over 8 wide receivers drafted in the first round, and maybe like 16 plus overall in the draft, and the Packers didn't draft anybody. And everybody knew that Rodgers wanted another weapon, that they're kind of thin at wide receiver after Devontae Adams. And instead, they just signed the Funchess off free agency, and they didn't address it in the draft. And now Funchess opts out of the 2020-2021 season. So I know Rodgers is very, very upset. It's just another thing he has to overcome. I feel like the Packers lucked out in getting Favre and then Rodgers, and they've kind of not appreciated how lucky they have to be one of those franchises that has 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back. I think over the years they should have definitely put a stronger team with Rodgers, and now Rodgers is on the downside. He's in the latter stages of his career. He's not the same Rodgers that he was, so he needs a little more help. And just to see the Packers go draft another quarterback instead of helping Rodgers in his last few years, it's kind of upsetting. But I mean, it is what it is. They still have a really good team. Their main problem last year was just defending the run. It wasn't really like scoring points. I mean, their offense didn't look that great, but if they could have stopped the run, they could have had a chance. And so hopefully they're able to fix that and have a good year. I do believe for this upcoming season for the NFL, the rosters with the deepest rosters will have the better chance of winning. Not necessarily the best rosters, because I feel like it's inevitable that a couple teams have coronavirus outbreaks, and then once that happens, they're gonna have to quarantine for maybe like a week or 2. And the NFL season being so short, if you lose any of your players for like a week or 2 and they miss a game or 2, that could be the difference between maybe getting a wild card or missing out on the playoffs entirely, or being the last team in the NFL season. So if you have a deep roster with a lot of quality players, maybe not high end, but if you have a deep roster where like if your starter gets sick and has to quarantine for a little bit, the backup is not that much worse than him. Those teams will do really, really well. A team that I kind of consider in that category would be the 49ers. They have a really deep roster. They're kind of talented all over every single position. They have 1 or 2 players that could play at a quality level. I don't rate their quarterback that high, Garoppolo. I think Garoppolo is overrated. Even if most people have him rated pretty low or not that high, I think he's still overrated. I think most people have Garoppolo as like a 10 to 12 quarterback in the league. I have him lower. I feel like Cousins is better than him for sure. I would even feel if you traded Garoppolo for Dalton, I wouldn't feel that bad. I do think Garoppolo is a little better than Dalton, but he's not that much better to be getting paid. What, he got like $140 million contract like 3 years ago. Yeah, I don't like Garoppolo. I think he cost him the Super Bowl. There's a lot of 49er fans that think Shanahan cost him the Super Bowl, or they put all the blame on Shanahan. I think that's dumb. Shanahan is one of the smartest coaches in the league. He's an offensive genius. He's the main reason the 49ers are good again. And to slander him just because, he blew that lead against the Patriots as the offensive coordinator, and now he blew a smaller lead versus the Chiefs. I feel like he knew that the Chiefs are a team that's capable to come back. They shown it all throughout the playoffs. They came back against the Titans, and they came back against the Texans. So, I mean, if you're Shanahan, you got to, keep your foot on the pedal and not let them come back. And Garoppolo just couldn't make the throws. It's just that simple. He had a really bad interception at the end of the first half that cost his team some points. And then once the Niners were down, Shanahan drew up the perfect play. Emmanuel Sanders running down the middle, has a step or two on his defender. Garoppolo, this is your chance to be the hero. This is your chance to, cement your name in the books. All you got to do is hit a 40-yard bomb to Emmanuel Sanders, and you're good. Game over, or most likely, you never know with Patrick Mahomes, but it would have been a great moment. And he overshoots Emmanuel Sanders by like 5-10 yards. Doesn't even give him a chance. Emmanuel Sanders can't even believe it. Obviously, Emmanuel Sanders said all the right things post-game, and even now in the offseason that he's not with them. But like Garoppolo he's not a good quarterback. But like I said, if the Niners are a team that could definitely get through a couple players having to be sidelined. They're that deep of a roster. The Seahawks, on the other hand, they're one of those teams that I look at and I'm like, if they lose any of their players to coronavirus or because they have to quarantine, it could be a bad season for the Seahawks. The Seahawks, Russell Wilson masked a lot of the problems that the Seahawks have. They're a really good team with Wilson, but just because Wilson's there, Wilson is maybe the best quarterback in the league. I know Patrick Mahomes has all the media attention right now, but he has a lot of weapons, and he has Andy Reid, and that combination elevates him. Russell Wilson has Pete Carroll, who's not an offensive-minded coach, and he has no weapons other than Metcalf, and Metcalf is just good for a go route. He's kind of stiff on the hips. He doesn't know the whole route tree, and he has their tight end's kind of good. I forgot his name. Can't remember off the top of my head. Their running backs are decent, not spectacular. The O-line is still trash. So if the Seahawks were to lose any of their players, it would be ugly for the Seahawks. If they were to lose Wilson for a couple games, that would be the worst. Like the Niners, if they lost Garoppolo and they had one of their backups come in and be the quarterback for a couple games, I don't think they'll lose much of a beat. They could win those games depending on the opponent. If the Seahawks lost Wilson and had to have Geno Smith, I believe, is their backup, it would be ugly. The Seahawks would have a top 5 pick next season, and they just traded the next few picks for the safety from the Adams from the Jets. So that trade, I think it was a good trade just because they don't have that much top end talent in Seattle, and they need to give Wilson some help. And if everything plans out, those 2 picks will be later in the draft, so it won't hurt them that much. But if they were to lose Wilson, oh man, that team suddenly becomes one of the worst teams in the NFL. Yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about in this first episode of the podcast. If you stayed this long and listened to me talk about the NBA, Europa League, and Champions League, my thoughts on the NBA bubble, and how I don't think the MLB season is going to finish. Thank you so much for listening to this first episode of the Hard to Handle Sports Podcast.